So I'm going to introduce myself now. My name is Nick Jeffries. I live on the Isle of Wight and I work for the Ellen Macarthur Foundation. By profession, I'm an environmental civil engineer. The first bit of my career was mainly about water in all her forms, playful, potable. I did potable water and wastewater infrastructure in Canary Wharf, all the way through to aquaculture in Uganda and groundwater development in Afghanistan. And then I had a little bit of a change in focus, and I got into renewable energy via the amazing Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales. I don't know if any of you know that. That led to 4 or 5 years immersing myself into the world of low-cost solar irrigation pumps. And actually, he should be here, he might be here later. It's now a company called Future Pump, and my old colleague Toby is here, so if you want to know anything about that, you can go and find him. And then I moved to the Isle of Wight, and I started working at the Ellen Macarthur Foundation, and I've been working there for 6 years. When I started, we were about 60 of us. Now there's about 180, but we've also got a very large network of companies, policy organisations, institutions, academics, a really, really big network. And what we're attempting to do is the not so small task of change the economic system. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. But as it's a little bit late in the day, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go easy on theory, and I'm just going to give you some examples of the circular economy in action in different sectors, and then at the end I'll sort of bring it together and say, see what the commonalities are. And if any of this intrigues you, then you go to our website, go to our YouTube channel. There's loads and loads of material there. Just dig in. Okay, but before I start going into some of these examples, I just want to address one thing straight off the bat, and that is, why am I talking about the circular economy at a regenerative agriculture conference? So, recently, I became reacquainted with this diagram. It was through a conversation between 2 legendary economists, Kate Raworth, who I'm sure many of you know about and read about the donut economics, and another economist from the US called Herman Daly. And this is actually Herman Daly's diagram, and when he published it in the late 80s, it was considered very, very radical. Yeah? Very radical indeed. And what this diagram shows is that the economy actually sits inside a bigger system called the environment or the natural world. Pretty radical, eh? Well, it was actually, because up till that point, most books on classical economic theory did not include the natural world. And the World Bank thought it was very, very radical, and they decided, allegedly, not to include it in their 1992 World Development Report. And so the other thing this shows is that we are moving from an empty world to a full world. I put the population graph on the bottom, but maybe 200 years ago, when the population of the world was 1 billion, we saw the world as sort of, almost infinite in its ability to provide resources and bottomless in its ability to absorb our waste. But now, now we're moving to a full world. Now we have 7.7 billion people. There's 10,000 people being added every hour. And, the square of the economy is now sort of coming up and butting up to the circle of nature with all the consequences that are now unfolding. And if we carry on this trajectory, to paraphrase one of my favourite film philosophers, we risk drifting into the arena of the unwell and making enemies with our own future. So, when finally Herman Daly's radical idea was accepted by the World Bank, he took the opportunity to suggest a few prescriptions to the World Bank. And there was about 4, and these were 2 of them. Stop counting the consumption of natural capital as income, and maximise the productivity of natural capital and invest in increasing it. And this is pretty well quite a nice summary of the mindset of regenerative agriculture. Food, fuel and fibre production that can draw carbon down from the atmosphere into the soil, that can rebalance the hydrological cycle, that can allow wildlife to thrive, and that can help re-establish our connection and respect with the natural world. And so that's why when we think about shifting the economy onto a healthier trajectory, we say that it has to have these three principles at its heart. We need to design out waste and pollution, we need to keep resources in use, and we need to regenerate natural systems using many of the approaches that are discussed at this conference. Okay, so I've justified my presence. Now I'll continue with my presentation. All right. So, silly question. Does anyone know what this is? It's a light bulb. Congratulations. It's actually quite a special light bulb. Does anyone know why it's special? Yes. Right. It's been actually working for about 120 years. So this light bulb is located in a fire station in San Francisco, and it was installed in 1901, and it's been burning for literally hundreds of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of hours. Coffee. But in 1925, a group of companies came together, 5 companies who manufactured most of the world's light bulbs. And long life light bulbs just wasn't working for them. And so they decided, and this group was called the Phoebus Cartel, and so they decided that they would all design and manufacture light bulbs that lasted 1,000 hours or less. And so the idea of planned obsolescence was born. It was perfectly possible to have a light bulb that lasted 2,500 hours or more, or hundreds of hours, but that wasn't working for them. The profits pointed to short-lived light bulbs. But why even buy light bulbs? Why not buy light? Many companies and organisations around Europe do exactly that. Take Schiphol, for example. They pay a company called Signify to provide them luxes, provide them illumination. That's all they pay for. And then Signify own all the light fittings, they own all the bulbs, they own the energy management systems, and actually a corollary of that is that the lighting energy demand for Schiphol goes down by up to 50%. And Signify, because they own the light bulbs, the fittings and everything, they have a motivation, incentive to keep things durable and recyclable and reusable. And so in that way, they keep resources in their ecosystem rather than adding to the waste pile. Now this doesn't, lighting as a service doesn't work in all locations, but it certainly works in big offices, big airports, hospitals, that kind of stuff. But there are many, many other business models that are shifting away from this ownership to this idea of performance. And I've come across furniture, aircon in Singapore, washing machines. You can actually have a washing machine in your house, and you pay 20, 25 euros a month, and you get 35 washes or something. And then when you move from your flat, then the company comes and takes the washing machine. Right, let's have an example from the world of food. This is a company called Appeal, and they have created an edible coating for things like cucumbers, avocados, asparagus, limes, and what it does is extend their shelf life. So here is just an example. This is day 10 of cucumber without Appeal, with plastic wrapping, and then with Appeal. And I think one of the really beautiful and elegant things about this solution, think about this Appeal's coating, is it's actually made from food byproducts. It's made from pips, pulps, and other things that would normally be thrown away. And it has many benefits. It extends, as I said, it extends the life of these vegetables. It avoids the use of wrapping, because lots of companies, food suppliers, to preserve the life, they wrap it with a cling film or plastic. But this is the great thing. It also allows you to pick the fruits and vegetables later, so they can ripen a little bit more, because normally stuff is picked early because of logistics reasons and storage. But if you can have this coating, you can pick them later, so there's a customer benefit of better tasting fruits and vegetables, but the customers don't have to pay more because the amount of money saved in avoided spoilage more than offsets the amount you have to pay for the coating. This t-shirt is made from old t-shirts. Yeah? I got a little bit obsessed by Alexander von Humboldt in the last few months. Amazing guy. Apparently, he was the last guy who knew everything. And then it got to a stage where there's too much to know, and then you couldn't know everything ever again. And he's credited with identifying climate change. He talked about seeing places that he visited in South America where they were treating the soil like a mine. And his idea was that everything in nature is interconnected and reciprocal. So I love Alexander von Humboldt, and particularly his maps. And so I printed one on demand. It's the only one of its kind. And should I no longer be into Alexander von Humboldt, or my daughter and son not be, I could send this back to T-Mills, and they will give me £5, which is about 20% of the value of it new. And then it will be put back into their circular value chain, their sort of ecosystem, and it will be used to make new T-shirts. And currently, you can put about 40% recycled content into a T-shirt, and the rest of the virgin material comes through their organic and renewable energy-powered supply chain. And rather wonderfully, any person, any company can piggyback on this technology. So there's literally thousands of companies now using this circular value network. And that points a little bit to the idea that digital and automation does have a role to play in sort of amplifying goodness. Buildings, the built environment. I was just having a conversation with this gentleman on the front row here. It is the biggest producer of waste, the sector that produces the most waste, and it produces a sizable amount of greenhouse gas emissions. At least before lockdown, they say that a built area the size of Paris was being constructed every week. So it's a really, really important industry. So this building is in the town of Brummen in the Netherlands, and the municipality decided that they needed a new town hall, but there was possibly going to be some boundary changes in local government in the years to come. So they said, look, we just want a design life of 20 years. So the architect, a guy called Thomas Rau, he designed this building, and when this building is eventually it's not needed anymore, 90% of the materials can be used for another building. So it's a bit like a Lego structure. They avoided concrete. Concrete's a very difficult building element to reuse, and so it's more timber, steel, clever connection fittings, and so you can easily take it apart and use it elsewhere. And this building has another feature. It actually has a material passport. Yeah? And that captures a lot of the characteristics of the construction, the design. And so what this building is doing is actually surpassing its primary function as a town hall, but just like this t-shirt, it is a material depot for future t-shirts. Buildings. And because it's modular, it's easier, it's quicker, and it's less disruptive to put up. We're moving to the global south now. So I'm at a little plug. I made some work, me and the Ellen Macarthur Foundation, we produced some films about circular economy applied to the food and agriculture system in East Africa, and I'll be showing those films in the big top tent at 7 o'clock. So do come along if you're interested. Okay, so what does a circular economy look like in the global south? The urban population of Africa is set to double in the next 30 years, I think. And that means a lot more mouths to feed. It means a lot more waste is going to be generated. And because of rising affluence, there will be a greater demand for high-value proteins like chicken and fish. I probably don't need to tell most of you in this room that the way that we produce our chicken and fish at the moment is not always good for the environment. So there's a company called AgroProtein who looks at many of these issues holistically. They're based in Cape Town, and what they do is they take urban organic waste, just regular municipal waste or waste from abattoirs and other sources, and they feed it to black soldier flies who have a pretty incredible metabolism, especially their larvae. And what they do is they create a very nutritious, low carbon intensity insect feed that can be used to feed chickens and fish. There's a number of site byproducts. So the insect poo, or the frass as they call it, can be used. It's a bit like vermicompost, high in nutrients, high in carbon, and so that is sold to farmers in the peri-urban areas of Cape Town and Durban to support better growing techniques. And they even, this is a bit grim actually, they even sort of, they talk about like olives, they even squeeze an oil out of the larvae, and that is super nutritious, and they use that as a nutritional supplement for livestock. It's going to be very good, but I'll pass. And so there's 2 AgroProtein factories set up so far. As I said, one's in Cape Town, one's in Durban. Each of them process 250 tons of organic waste a day. It's 90,000 tons a year, and they turn over about $7.5 million. So they make money from waste. And really importantly for Africa, the average age in Africa, the whole African continent, is less than 19 years. And so there's literally tens of millions of young people who need a job coming to the job market every year, and they create about 30 or 40 jobs in these factories. This is a project or program in Brazil called Ligue aos Pontos, or Connect the Dots, and it's run by the Sao Paulo municipality. And what they do is they pay a premium to farmers in the surrounding areas of Sao Paulo to grow food in a more agroecological way. And they pay a premium for that, and they redirect and they direct a high proportion of that food to school feeding programs or to vulnerable communities. And they also, and of course, they support these farmers in making that transition, but also monitoring their soil, their water, to ensure that it's actually having a positive impact. And then any byproducts that are collected from meal productions, is collected by the schools or other collection centres, and then processed through recycling companies, and then that's looped back to these farmers. So it's a nice sort of nice virtuous circle back to the farmers. So when I think about this project, it reminds me of that Wendell Berry line. People are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. And it's amazing. Last time I checked, this was about a year ago, so maybe I'll stand corrected, that in a typical 5-year course of medicine in the UK or the US, there's about 20 hours of nutritional education. And diet-related diseases are the #1 killer now. So there's 20 hours to the #1 killer. But this seems to go against that. The Connect the Dots seems to go against that. We're feeding, the Sao Paulo municipality is feeding really nutritious food to kids so they can think clearly and avoid obesity. It's doing it in a way which supports farmer livelihoods to grow in an ecological way, agroecological way, and this in turn has benefits on the natural world, connecting the dots. I don't think there are any policymakers in this room. But could we do this in the UK? Public procurement of regeneratively produced food to allow our kids and our countryside to thrive. Seems to make sense to me. Okay, this is the last one. We're in Kenya now. This is called the Upper Tana Water Fund. We have Nairobi in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, and there's a river called the Tana River that supplies 95% of the water, drinking water, to Nairobi, but a really sizable amount of their energy as well through the hydro schemes along the river. But over the last 20, 30 years, farming in the steep upper catchments of the Tanner River have caused huge amounts of soil instability, and silt enters the river, and that goes downstream, and you have all these downstream water users who are having to every year, carry out these very expensive desilting operations. One bottling plant pays about $1 million a year, and of course it's very, very disruptive to the citizens in Nairobi with their power and their water. But there's an organisation called the Nature Conservancy who set up this fund, and how the fund works is that downstream water users pay into this fund, and then the fund is used to support farmers, about 20,000 farmers at the last count, to do more conservation agriculture. And in doing so, the farmers get more soil fertility, so their yields improve. But they also, some of the crops that they use to stabilise the slopes, like elephant grass, they can earn extra revenue from that, or they can certainly feed it to their cattle. And then, in theory, the amount that the downstream water users pay into this fund is offset by the money that they save. Okay, so just to bring all this together, so what have we got here? What are the characteristics that I can draw out from these cases? Well, firstly, it's system. Design is so important, but designing with the system in mind. Designers typically design for functionality, cost, aesthetics, taste. We have a designer in the room, actually. I'm going to ask him later if I've missed out anything on the list. But the circular economy or circular design asks you to actually design as part of the system. Yeah? That your product or your service sits in this bigger system. A bit like Herman Daly's diagram, the economy sitting inside the natural world. And this, just as we're at a agricultural food conference, our next publication, which is coming out in September, we are trying to mobilise food designers. So how can food designers, so chefs or anyone who makes a conscious decision about sourcing ingredients, be it for a meal or for a product, what is a good ingredient for the biosphere and for the climate? Sorry, climate and for biodiversity. Is it diversity? Is it regeneratively grown? Can we use upcycled materials? So what was waste? Can we turn them into the ingredients? So we're trying to mobilise this food design community to use ingredients that and the influence of their use has a positive impact on the environment. And of course, farmers play a really important role in that, because farmers know what's good for wildlife and for water quality and so on. Nature inspired. One of our schools of thought, we didn't invent the concept of circular economy, by the way. We brought together these various schools of thought and we put it into a sort of a coherent framework that we've been applying to different sectors and regions of the world, and showing the robust evidence that it just makes sense. But one of our schools of thought is biomimicry, and the question that biomimicry asks is, how can we tap into 3.8 billion years of R&D? It's the biggest R&D lab that we could never afford. Yeah? Or can our industrial systems be more like our natural systems? And can we reimagine waste as food? Value creating, that's so important, and I think I've demonstrated that in the examples I've discussed today. It's globally applicable. We've had a little bit of a tour of the world showing all the applications, and of course the principles are universal, but the way it's applied is contextual. And then the role of enablers. So circular economy it's not just a material and technology challenge. Digital plays a role, of course education plays a role, education always plays a role, but also policy, the right incentives, the right policy frameworks, and also finance. And we've looked at all of those enablers and the role they play in the circular economy. All right, okay, well just to finish off, if any of this has intrigued you, these are just some of the reports and the programs that we've been doing in the last 10 or 11 years. All of them available for you to look at. Just go to our website in the publications section. But I just want to leave, and this is our report that is going to be coming out in September. But I just want to leave you finish with a line from, I don't know if any of you are Adam Curtis fans. This is a line that comes right at the end of Adam Curtis's recent 8-hour TV documentary, Can't Get You Out of My Head. The ultimate hidden truth of the world is it's something we make and could just as easily make differently. So just as many aspects of our current linear economy have been designed and created, so we can create an economy that's regenerative and that works for people and planet in the long term. Thank you very much.